Hello, everybody, and welcome to the LJL officially unofficial broadcast, bringing you coverage of the LJL 2021 Spring Split. I'm one of your hosts, Alex, otherwise known as Lexi by Mars Swan on the internet. In the middle, doing production, is Initialize in the middle. Hello, sir. Welcome, Samuel.
Hello, hello. It's good to be here. It's good to be casting. It's good to be trying to pull some production works out in the background. Hopefully, it's all going all right so far. We got some snazzy new scrolling music stuff as well, which I'm all very happy
Oh
about.
wow, we
I know.
we we
I
finally
know.
have the technology. We can make moving break screens.
Have the technology. Thank you, Samuel, for stepping up and doing that for us. Over on the other end, Nymera. Hello, sir. You're not going to be around for all of this, but you're definitely
No,
saying hello.
I have an education to pursue, which means that it's Monday. I have lectures to go to. So once again, DFM evade me. DFM and Aria has evaded me for the first 2 weeks of this split, and I'm most put out.
I mean, first week you gave me the option. This week it's just a formality, and then the next week it's just going to be the normal. Like, I'm just always going to cast DFM. You're never going to get this opportunity. I
No, I've
joke.
given it enough time to make a habit.
It's okay. Week three, DFM games are halfway through, so minimum you'll get one DFM game, minimum. But for this week, we've got Crest Gaming out facing off against Sengoku for our first game, and Nymera. This is a game where we're going to learn a lot about Crest Gaming Act, I think, personally, and also the ability of Sengoku. I don't know
It's
about
yeah.
yourself.
I get what you're getting at because it seems like a bit of a bland statement when you think, oh, we're just going to learn a lot. Well, that's because week one really didn't show as a good benchmark for either team.
Mm.
CGA did take a game off of Axes, and that was really important because Axes have looked pretty good. They've ended up doing some pretty good stuff in this week as well. But now we look at Sengoku, who were the only team in the LGL out of all 8 teams to go 0-2. It seemed like it's a very level playing field, and Sengoku somehow ended up at the bottom of the heap. So for CGA to have one scrappy game, which they won, and another scrappy game, which they just kind of got taken apart in, this might be an opportunity for Sengoku
Mm.
to say, actually, we didn't deserve to go 0-2. We're still in that pack. But of course, they still have to prove that, and CGA will want to, of course, take that win because we know how close the playoffs race gets.
Yeah, and
Yeah, this also. Mm,
I,
Yeah,
I,
go
I
for it,
have
Initialize.
done some production work in the background. I can finally join the conversation. I was going to say that I actually reckon that while I probably favor Sengoku just on paper, I have been quite excited by CGA, much like I've been quite excited by Axis and Rascal Jester, in that they are significantly more competitive than I think people were assuming on paper. Particularly that mid-jungle duo look quite scary for CGA, honestly.
Well, let's actually do a quick comparison between these mid-jungle duos of Crash and Ramune for Sengoku Gaming and Kasin and Neihyung for Crest Gaming Act. This might be where a lot of the game is decided, and I think a part of this is going to be, is Ramune still able to compete with the best? Or is Nahyan this part of this new wave of new mid laners who are kind of taking the old guard and going, actually, we can teach you some new tricks. You have to keep up with us or you're going to fall behind. We're seeing that all over the world at the moment.
So I think for me, it's a lot of catching up for Ramone to do. Didn't really play in 2019. Didn't really play that well in 2020 because they came on and had a spring split in the Hawks, which was just a bit of a dumpster fire of a team. They weren't coordinating, and Ramone suffered because of that. In summer of 2020, got benched. That was the Hawks lineup with Dasher moving back to the mid lane, who of course outperformed them. And now Ramone's moved on to greener pastures for themselves. So we're looking at this and we're thinking, okay, Nahon has not had the most stellar professional career, but Ramone's really struggled in the last couple of years, whereas Nahon has managed to keep quite a robust mental. When you look at some of the teams that they've been on, they've managed to perform in isolation pretty well on quite struggling teams. So I'm looking at this mid lane, I'm thinking, well, while both of them have had some dark spots, I really think that Ramone is the one that has to step up to the plate here.
Okay, so for us at the moment, Ramane's got to step up, but coming over to you, Initialize, Crash versus Kasin. This is a rookie versus a proven player.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's exactly what I would put it down as. Crash has been playing for quite a long time at potentially quite a high level. Say, go back to 2016, this guy was both incredible and also very bad at the same time, was doing ridiculous things over in the LCK and kind of getting punished for it occasionally. Kassin is basically coming out of an academy system and looking to make a name for himself, and that can be a bit of a challenge. Of course, this is a slightly different environment. It's not straight LAN. It's not in person, where veteranship can sometimes offer an even greater edge. But all the same, it is potentially quite a difficult matchup to come into, at least experience-wise, especially in the jungle, where experienced junglers and experienced teams can look to punish your pathing, and you might just not know what to do against a coordinated strike at your jungle consistently.
And that's definitely something to think about coming into this match, because we've got maybe or arguably one of the, or two of the most heavy weak side top lane players in the league. I think that's fair to say. Paz and Nap are some of the two top laners who always have to rely on their team to be able to rely upon them, because they're going to be playing weak side. The jungle's going to be in the mid lane. They're going to be in the bot lane. They're going to be doing so many shots. Exactly. Where do we see that match going? Or is it just going to be literally two top laners who don't want anything to do with each other?
When you've got Renekton in the meta, both of them being relatively good Volibears players too. I think they're actually decent at the Renekton Volibears. So if we get a matchup like that, it's actually probably in both their wheelhouses. We know they've played stuff like Shen before. If you go all the way back to 2019, didn't really see as much of that in 2020 as maybe I would have liked. And then of course there's things like Camille hanging around the meta. I know that, of course, you go back to World's Plans for V3 when Paz was there. He played a lot of Renekton with we're trying to get Renekton Talia or Renekton Lee's combo. So it's not like he's he's unused to being played around. It's just not really what they went towards and had success with. So that's the real question, really, isn't it? Because it's about who's going to find success in this matchup, and that's a much quite harder question to answer because, of course, these junglers haven't quite slotted into their teams yet. We've only seen 1 week of them playing.
Very true, very true. We're going to quickly go over to the opposite side of the map and give it a quick check-in. Initialize.
Hello.
Milan and Alchemy facing off against Gango NT. This is one of the most aggressive bot lanes in the LJL in Sengoku Gaming, or at least in just historic playstyle, we would assume, from Gango and NT. Facing off against Alchemy and Milan, who Milan had not the best opening weekend, but at least it was serviceable, and Alchemy might sadly be following down old habits.
Yeah, there's definitely been moments from both of these guys where you go, you really shouldn't have been caught there. There was a bit of an egregious one from Milan in particular.
Oh no, they're learning from each other.
Where he beautifully dodges all of the skill shots with the Gale Force and
plan.
then walks forwards into the Solar Flare. And it's sort of like, that kind of thing is going to get you punished at this level, especially versus guys like Gango in particular, who is so aggressive, for better or worse. There's been a week, there's a bit of time. If, of course, also, like Alchemy knows Gango quite well. They were lane partners last year on CGA. So if they can weather the storm, that would be their best chance of coming out ahead here. And of course, it's not like Gango and NT are known for playing weak side all that well. So if you can get some ganks down there, then maybe you just turn that around, because blind aggression isn't always the way forward in League of Legends.
Well, gentlemen, with that all said, I believe it's probably time for us to go over to the pick and ban phase. But before we do, who do we think is going to be winning this game? Crest Gaming Act or Sengoku Gaming? Initialize first.
I'm going off what my predictions were on the predictions game, and I gave it over to CGA because I wasn't all that impressed by Sengoku Gaming.
I actually can't remember who I ended up actually voting for.
We're in the same boat for this one, Nymera. You said Sengoku Gaming.
I'm pretty sure I've said Sengoku Gaming. I do believe that they will be, again, relying on their individual talent and coming out with an aggressive playstyle, so I'll go with them still.
Okay, well, with that said, 2 for Sengoku, 1 to Crest Gaming Act. Let's find out who's right as we go into this pick and ban phase. Gentlemen, take it away.
Thank you so much, Lexi. We are on to picks and bans. Sengoku Gaming versus CGA. And a little bit to get over here. Specifically, Sengoku on the blue side, CGA on the red. It'll be Paz, Crash, Ramune, Gango, NT rounding out their roster.
So, of course, on the other side, that does mean we have Crest Gaming Act. So that is Nap, Kassin, Nahian, Milan, and Alchemy. We've got the first bans coming in already.
We absolutely do. You can see the Twisted Fate and the Olaf that Sengoku Gaming want off the table. On the other side, of course, it is the Draven and the Kaiser. Two very, well, not two very high priority picks, but two interesting picks. The first one being very much a target ban against Gango. Draven's not meta at the minute, guys. Sad as we might be to hear about that. And yep, the Olaf, of course, on the other side, just very high priority jungler right now. Renekton too, one of the very strong top laners, and does break up Renekton plus Nidalee, Talia, the likes of that.
Yeah, ironically, kind of Draven's suffered from having to complete full items in bot lane. You can't just like double stack BF swords or go for like super efficient AD builds. So, but it's still aggressive lane, which you don't really want to get snowballed. So take that away from Gango. We do have, of course, that Renekton taken away. We know that's actually quite an important first pick. But this is quite interesting. It's the first pick Thresh. This is really good at teaming up with a lot of different bot laners. But I know that the likes of, say, Core JJ over in North America says that they don't particularly like Thresh early in draft because it's so unreliable. If you're in a 2v2 where you can't reliably hit those hooks, your value as a champion just goes down. So the question is, why are you first picking it? What do you think that CGA are likely to head towards? Is it like you know that they're going to pick up the Misfortune? Is that why you picked it up? I have to see in these next couple of rounds.
Of course, the other thing that Thresh does do reliably, though, is offer a lantern. And that can often be a worthy consideration, right? That while the Flay and the Hook are a lot more mercurial in how effective they can be, and people are good at dodging skill shots at this level, guys. Surprise, surprise. Things like Lantern for immobile carries, or even the likes of, I would have said something like an Olaf, but of course that's been banned away, do make those champions significantly more reliable in and of themselves. And top of that list is Aphelios. Lantern for Aphelios is so huge.
But you can't get Lantern out of a Hextech Ultimatum. We talked about the Camille and how it's been hanging around the top lane champion pool. I think it's really good. I think it's one of the best top laners in the current meta right now. And getting paired up with, of course, that Galio, which can be in the support role, can be in mid. That's a flex too. Is very important. So we pretty much know that Nap is going to be heading towards that. And without the likes of Paz's Renekton, which is one of his stronger laning champions up in that top side, without Pantheon being able to go into it too, Paz doesn't have a plethora of strong laning champions to go back versus this Camille.
Yeah, he has shown, he himself has shown the Camille beforehand, but it's a question what he has as an answer into it. Renekton would have been an obvious one, but that's off the table now. Yone is being banned away by CGA. They clearly want to index into some Ramene's champion pool. I wonder whether actually we see something like a Lucian ban here, actually. And for the other side of Sengoku Gaming, they are just getting rid of things that pair up well with that Camille. They've got rid of the Twisted Fate earlier. Talia, definitely another one of those champions that works very well with Camille. Hextech ultimatums do act a little bit like barrels, and people within them do end up being a bit like fish when it comes to Talia.
So what you're saying is Gragas is really the key to all this. The thing is that you talk about the Lucian, but actually, it's one of the better matches versus Camille for sure. Both of these teams have played Lucian last week. It is going to be banned away by CGA. I guess talking about what was banned last week by these teams, we're looking at, of course, the Aphelios picked up by Sengoku, but production's been fishing around for a couple of stats and come up with one of those denizens in the barrel you so aforementioned. Aphelios was banned 2 games out of 2 by Sengoku, and they played on blue side both of their games. So this is not like they're banning it on red side. And last week, and now they've got blue side, they choose to pick it. They chose to leave it open right now versus CGA, but they didn't want to do that versus their previous opponents. And now they're banning away the Udyr, which of course it's made its way up to the LJL. Of course it has.
Welcome to 2021, guys, when Udyr is the counter to all these fancy new champions. Samira, bear slap him. Camille, bear slap him. Yone, bear slap them. You see the idea here, guys. Bear slap plus chem tank is just a bit silly, so it's off the table. CGA, though, will lock in the victor for Nation, who is definitely a accomplished control mage player, so we'll be relatively happy to pick that champion up. On the other side of the map, though, it's looking like Paz wants to go towards the Gnar into Camille, which is fine in the return trades, but the initial trades when you can just hook shock onto Gnar, who doesn't really want to be dealing with a lady with blades for legs attacking him, could get a bit scary.
Ramune potentially picking up the Zed, which is something that Megamin from Axis showed in week 1 and won with even more impressively. But is instead going towards the Zoe, and this is so Ramune was a player who, when they were a sub for Dead Nation Focus Me, of course, one of the most winningest teams in the LJL, the most winning. team, was basically brought on because Seros couldn't play LeBlanc and Zoe. And Ramone played the Zoe whilst on DFM, so at least he's hopefully kept their skills up for that particular champion. But on the other side, we're going to confirm, of course, that Galio will be in the support role because the Victor was locked in, but it's going to be Rek'Sai locked in for Kassin. I really like this pick. It has the ability to gank something like mid better than a Lilia can, and versus a Zoe who is not known for being the most defensive mid laner ever. That's quite an interesting way to go about this draft.
Plus, you've got definite setup with something like Camille as well, right? That if Camille gets the I can find the word for this, the Hextech Ultimatum, or even the hook shot, you do just get to tunnel in and get under that Gnar, and you've got another combo there that is nice and dangerous. So I understand the idea. Of course, Rek'Sai still falls off. I mean, what does Rek'Sai go? Is it the Prowler's Claw to get in more easily for those Umburrows, or is it?
So Yeah, so it is the Prowler's Claw because first off, pretty important thing is that your mythic stat is lethality. So it's not like you're going towards the Eclipse, which gives you the percent armor pen, or the Dustblade, which gives you ability haste. It gives you flat lethality, which of course Rek'Sai really benefits from, and it allows you to stay burrowed, Prowler's Claw, and get that instant knockup. You don't even need to flash. Also a reminder that the active of Prowler's Claw it's kind of like that gap closer of something like the Samira E, except that it also gives you something like 15% bonus damage to that target on the physical side of things after you dash in. So you go in and you know how much damage a Halo Blades Rek'Sai can end up doing, and being that assassin, it just becomes very, very hard for the likes of Zoe, who of course doesn't really get tanky, or Dephalios, who really doesn't have too many defense against it either, to get out alive even from the duration of that knockup.
Yeah, of course, it's another person to, yeah, exactly, as we said, Camille and Rek'Sai now both able to be Galio vectors, basically. You know, they can both go in and set up for a Victor and Misfortune to lay down the hurt, probably within a Hextech Ultimatum, such as you need it. And Gango is going to have to be very aware of his positioning on this Aphelios, or he is likely to get jumped on. But bluntly, Lilia, Zoe, honestly not bad targets themselves, and Thresh and Gnar in the right situation, definitely vulnerable too. I mean, for Sengoku Gaming, though, it's a good front to back fight, right? They can definitely throw out a fair amount of damage, and they've got a decent amount of pick. Lilting Lullaby into Mega Gnar, Gravitum, you know, they've got their own options, Bubbles as well. If they can keep CGA at range, then they can definitely win that kind of attrition war.
It's what I've been referring to as keep away tools. So if you tunnel in as the Rek'Sai, and you run into an Aphelios and a bubble, you don't really get to go out of that fight. Yeah, you just end. You pretty much, it ends as soon as it begins. There's a lot of turnaround damage from the side of Sengoku, as you're saying. So once again, it is going to be another story and another game of decisiveness. Can CGA really hit that engage using the likes of the Galio, the Rek'Sai, and the Camille to set up the big bullet times? And Milan didn't really get to do that in week one. They really struggled. In fact, Milan ended up being one of the players on the team that was caught out quite visibly on camera and on stream.
Yeah.
And so they're looking to maybe just shore up their positioning just a tad. And then this game, there's a lot more frontline and no Oriana ball to watch out for in this one.
All right, well, just waiting to get into game here, guys. So you've got our pretty faces on screen one more time. I think it's only a minute or so till we get there, so I won't bother skipping ahead. And we'll keep our eyes on when we do head on to that ref. We've seen what's going on with these team comps. And I think we're quite excited to see how, Kassim pulls off the Rek'Sai. It's definitely a very exciting one in. And see whether it actually works out in practice.
For sure, because it's one of those things where there was a post on Reddit the other day, and I know there's only so much value in Reddit posts, don't get me wrong, but it's like, oh man, Uda is so much more exciting right now than all of these mechanically intensive champions with overloaded kits. And, well, that's true to an extent, but that's because people like seeing new things. I like seeing new things. I like seeing champions picked in niche situations where maybe you could have said, oh, maybe we could have picked like a Kindred instead, or a Graves, or a Olaf. We could have done that. But picking something a little bit off meta and saying, well, no, I trust myself and we'll have this niche in the practice on this pick to make it succeed. I really enjoy that.
Yeah, I mean, completely right. I'm excited to see, of course, how it all works out, because, if you are going to pick up a Rek'Sai, you do need to make it work, and I don't think Rek'Sai is the greatest scaler in the game. It's not like the Olaf, which is now getting to run Gore Drinker and is now feeling significantly happier in the mid and late games. Rek'Sai doesn't quite have that, even if Prowler's Claw allows you to get more consistent target access.
Just a little bit of a heads up. Apparently the stream is flickering a bit on live. I don't know if there's much you can do about that.
I don't know if I can. That is, from what I can tell, that is either off OBS or off, not OBS, off OBS Ninja, rather, or of the stream itself, which I think might actually, for once, not be our end, guys, which is a bit of a shock to me as well.
Yes. Well, as it is, we will do our best to keep bringing you this game in the highest quality we possibly can. And, of course, we do have this 2v2 being set up. A fellow Thresh get access to the wave. If they get access to the wave, tend to have that priority for the next couple of waves. And from that point, it's a little bit hard for the Misfortune once again to get into this thing. Apparently, also the top of the scoreboard is just getting cut off a little bit too. So if you do get a chance to fix that at any given point, it'd be nice to see those logos and all the other stuff which is going on there. But just just a bit of this is the nature of bootleg broadcasting. We're here bringing this in English because of course no one else is out there doing that. We love this region. It's really fun to watch, and hopefully this will be a very fun game. As the AI power spike for the Blitzcrank bot says that Sengoku, if they make it to late game, are going to absolutely wreck face, but the early game is probably going over towards CGA.
Well, we'll have to see how, of course, that actually works out. I'll have a bit of a play in OBS quickly while this is all going on, and that does, however, mean that play-by-playing is a little challenging while I've only got half a screen up, which means I just come back and I see Milan has got half alpha.
It does, yeah, they do right now. That's fine. That's more than none. That's enough to play around with. You don't have the grey screen yet. It's the early game, Sam. I get to do my color casting thing. I look at Rek'Sai going kind of going full side clear. I'm trying to see if they've actually picked up their Gromp. I think they have at this point, going towards top side. And I don't think Lilia particularly wants to be tangling too much with the Rek'Sai early, but does have the phase rush. So it's unlikely that the initial burst trade ends up being a kill from Rek'Sai, because you're not at the point where you're going to be 100 searing, because Lilia comes out with a lot of HP from the early game. Got a Flay coming into that bot side, and Alchemy and Milan, much like last week, are not really faring well in the 2v2 where you think it probably should be a bit more even. Part of that's because the jungle is down bot lane. Part of that's maybe because they thought we don't want to fight towards priority early in case we do get ganked. But it's still 10 CS down. It's pots away from them. It's HP lead over to Sengoku, and they don't stop the back of Crash on the side of Sengoku, and now it just seems like, oh, wait, didn't we say that top lane was the weak side? Well, nap, your bot lane's really not going to be strong side, so maybe you're going to have to pull out some of the stops here on the top side of the map.
We'll have to keep our eyes on it, of course. It's definitely a challenge, to be sure, and that's kind of what we were wondering about, is how would this early game go for both these teams, because there's quite a lot that could go wrong for either of them.
For sure.
And of course, we'll see how it actually goes once it's all sort of said and done. There's definitely more to be seen and done, but as it stands, this is the state of the game.
That it is. We're looking at Chilling Smite coming from the Rek'Sai. I mean, I'm not... I'd imagine Chilling Smite probably just works a little bit better, because when you're chasing people down, you want to slow them, so you can run in for that knock-up. We do have a Rek'Sai coming towards the bot lane, but it will be spotted on that vision. See if Galli's going to flash in for anything, though.
All right. Hopefully that will have fixed the OBS situation. See how that one works, guys, and give me a heads up, and I can always have a bit of a fix. And you were right, there was a Rek'Sai, and it's hanging around.
Does look like it's worked. That's pleasant.
There we go. I've managed to do some shenanigans
what wizardry.
in the background.
Not just a caster of League of Legends, but a caster of streaming magic.
It's true.
Looking good.
What can I say? I bring magic.
Except you're welcome.
There you go.
There we go.
And we'll leave it at this for now. That does hopefully mean as well that we don't have as much chaos going on. And I can even move my cursor around on screen now as well. I've managed to play around with some browser sources.
Oh, lovely. That's nice.
But we'll find out how it actually works. It could all go wrong yet, guys. You think you have it sorted, and then it all goes wrong anyway. But that does mean that as it stands, it's 5 or so minutes into this game, and gold is relatively even outside of a slight laning advantage towards Sengoku Gaming, which is let them get about a 200 or so gold lead, maybe that. You know, the big one being around Gango over Milan right now, but that is a big CS lead down there.
But there is a CS lead in that mid lane too for Nation, who's making his way upwards. For Victor diving top lane at 6 minutes.
Here we go. There is the hook shot. It does land. Flash in for the attempted knockup, but Paz still goes down. Siphon Power does its job. Here comes Ramone, but he's in a Chaos Storm and is a little late to the party. CGA pick up first blood very cleanly.
There's just nothing to be done at that point. Paz flashes, still dies. Rek'Sai has the ability to force plays in the early game in a way which players may not be so comfortable with nowadays because it's been out of meta for a little while. It's a kill over to Victor, who's already doing well in that farm department. Just a quick PSA for those who don't know about Victor's changes over the last season. Victor is a champion that used to build an item to upgrade all of his basic abilities. That was the Hex Core. That no longer happens. You don't have that item in inventory and you can't see it on the scoreboard there either. Instead, if you get kills, assists, or farm minions, you get yourself points towards those upgrades, and getting a kill in the early game like happens here is very important to get this Victor online early. How does this start off? Of course, it's a hook shot. You get the ability to reset that aggro with the Hextech Ultimatum, which means that this is kind of a done deal. There are very few ways to misplay this. CJ pulled off pretty cleanly, and now Paz, who we talked about being the weak side player, goes down to that weak side situation, and Nap, who's often on the other or normally has the shoe on the other foot for that kind of situation, trying to outplay those dives, gets the first kill participation of that game too.
Yeah, all the while though, that bot lane is going increasingly poorly for the likes of Milan. That is a big CS lead down there of about 30 now, honestly. Milan will at least be able to clear up some of the wave, but that's not a pretty look.
Yes, it got worse from there. A bot lane memoir by Milan. It's because this is the kind of lane with the Felios Thresh where they're super happy to just be pushing up in lane, and then if the Rek'Sai comes down, outplaying that. This is a problem with ganking bot lane in general right now. There are so many high damage early game ADCs because of the itemization changes in part, but also because of some of the AD carries down there. And also, of course, the jungle champion pool. You've got less Sejuani, you've got more Rek'Sai, you've got more Lilia, which are better at ganking top lane and are more squishy as opposed to tanky. These duo lanes can absolutely nuke a jungler if they do misplay a gank. And because Cassin, of course, went towards that top lane and burned Flash, I really don't think CJ are going to be looking towards that duo lane, which means what's going to happen with this duo 2v2 situation? Well, it's probably just going to be more CS being farmed up by Gango and more being missed by Milan.
Paz, though, could be in a spot of bother here. He's going to end up in Mini-Gnar, and Cassin is just waiting for the gank. Nap still looking for it, thinking about the flash. They missed the hook shot, but they've still got the Hextech Ultimatum. They want to go for this. Cassin, at level 7, has got himself a chomp, and they just find it anyway, even with the miss hook shot. Now Ramone is roaming up, but I don't think he's going to find all that easier an access into this top lane.
There was a chance maybe they get themselves a bubble onto Nap, but he stood in the minion wave. Cassin's there too. Cassin gets the honey fruit and is going to start up a Herald. I wonder if that's going to have to be peeled off at some point, but of course Nap has the teleport and get back into the fray very easily. Doesn't have the flash nowadays, and this is what happened last week so much. It's a defensive bullet time to clear out a wave, and it doesn't even clear out most of that wave. Sengoku are winning very heavily on the bot side for CGA, splitting that map going towards top side around this Herald right now.
Crash is flashing in, but I don't know if he actually wants to be there. There is the Void Assault, and Cassin gets that one. Whether it's an assault or a rush is a bit of a moment of debate, but either way, Crash will fall down. He'll have to file with the police to see whether he can get something out of that, because he went down far too quickly as Nap's hopping over the wall, looking for those precision protocols and tactical sweeps. And CGA, once again, in these top side scuffles, are coming out ahead. They are 3-0 now. And the bot side, yes, they're getting CS, but they're not getting any kills. They're not getting the tower that far down. They've only got a single plate down there. It's not the same level of advantage right now.
It is in Aphelios we trust, and apparently it's not just Vi that stands for violence, it's Rek'Sai too, with that assault and battery coming out of the ultimate. But this is what happens with Rek'Sai. You have a really strong early game. Getting able to build lethality early as opposed to going towards the warrior enchantment and actually having less of a fall off from building that damage route is going to really help Cassin. Speaking of that, Prowler's Claw comes in. Very few champions build this item. I think it's a really good item. When Megamin was playing Zed, I think he should have built Prowler's Claw Zed. I think it's a really good one to get onto most of your AD assassins, particularly in pro play when your job is often to kill the first target. Prowler's Claw gives you unparalleled burst damage towards them, towards that end. Even if you think, wait, Alex, what about that Duskblade and the passive on the auto attack? Well, getting extra lethality from your mythic passive, also having the extra damage amp from the Prowler's Claw more than outstrips that. I think that Rek'Sai is really good on one item now. You can basically build whatever you want after this point. The assassination threat is there. And now we've really got a point where Aphelios needs to be, yeah, I mean, this is going to be a really dangerous spot for the Aphelios because he sat there like, I mean, a Lantern is only going to give me so much versus this Rek'Sai assassination potential. And then there's the Camille too.
Yeah, and honestly, Rek'Sai's issue has always been target accessibility the later the game gets on. How easy is it for her to get onto an AD carry? Basically, it means, do you have flash? What used to mean, do you have flash? That is less the case now because of things like Prowler's Claw, where you can now just press an active ability and have a pseudo Gale Force, have a pseudo Proto Belt, have just that easy access to dash through someone and be a bit of a deadly terror.
So, the problem with Prowler's Claw is that it's on a relatively long cooldown. I think it's on a 90-second cooldown as opposed to the 60-second. Actually, I'm not sure what it is on the current patch, and that's been changed around a little bit. I'm going to go check on this site I have with all... You know, this is a great thing. I have
do that
on the
because
site
there's
which
a
actually tells
dive
that.
being started bot lane, though, because Milan is getting thrown onto the onslaught there. Gango finds the Moonlight Visual, but not the kill, and that means Milan still alive for now. Alchemy went asleep, but the Infernum autos will finally do it. Rek'Sai summoning the Rift Herald on the top side, and I think Alchemy is sure to fall as well. Dream Dust doing its job. Lilia picks up a second kill as Ramone is in a 1v1 that he is losing heavily in the mid lane. And that
But luckily with...
shaming.
Luckily with Zoe, you do at least have your spell thief on your W, right? Which means that when you cast a summoner and you have Nimbus Cloak anyway, you just get a lot of move speed. Nahan trades flash for flash, but it's not an even trade in terms of the gap closing potential because of that extra move speed from Zoe, who does get away with that play. And on the bottom side, Sengoku, they're manifesting bot lane ganks. That's what they're doing. That's all they care about in this game. They're just like manifest. And they get themselves 2 kills out of it. And it's more waves taken away from Milan. It's a kill over to Gango very scarily, who's gone for the Kraken Slayer. This won't be the extra disengage potential. And now Ramone might be getting ganks in the mid lane.
He gets Prowler's Claw. Good lord, that target accessibility. Flash, Prowler's Claw, and that is a dead Zoe. Nice gank from Cassin, who is doing exceptionally well on this early game Rek'Sai.
They tried the Jinzo out last week. They thought, okay, let's go for an early game champion, snowball the game, and have something which can be on the map, making these early lanes really suffer in a way that a lot of junglers don't do in the LJL or in the world meta at the moment. Anyway, it's not like we've got those Jarvan gangs coming at level 2 anymore. Rek'Sai, though, with this kind of build, can slide into a massive mid-game power spike, and you can see that Flash Prowler's Claw covers about half a screen. It's much further away than someone like a Zoe can ever realistically disengage from. Sengoku lose another kill in the mid lane, and really important because, of course, if this Victor starts getting ahead and gets more kill participation, they're already level 11. It's only 14 minutes in. Nahyun is going to be a force to be reckoned with on this top side of the map, mid side of the map. That's the one.
I mean, absolutely. Another thing is, Rek'Sai might fall off, but if you get to snowball this hard, there are so many squishy members who you can just 100 to 0 at this point, especially if you're getting the execute on something like that Void Rush, which does do a fair amount of damage, and you pair that up with enough lethality, and who needs Black Cleaver at this point?
Exactly, right? You're less utility, less going towards that brawlery style, you get less HP, sure, so you're going to be a bit squishier. But this is a game where you've got a Gnar on the top lane. This isn't Malphite. This isn't Sion or Maokai or Ornn or something like that. That's a true assassination potential too. I look at CGA's comp now and I think, because you've got such a hilarious lead onto your jungler who is actually looking to go towards that Black Cleaver as well, looking like it. This is very, very dangerous to the entire side of Sengoku because there's no one on this team that if they walk into Fog of War isn't at risk of being finished off by Rek'Sai going in. And then you got to remember there's the Camille and the Galio to follow up.
Completely right. Yeah, if the Camille gets to start up, even throw that Hextech ultimatum out and cause some chaos, as we've been alluding to. Hell, as we've seen happen in the top lane, then things do quickly fall apart right now, and it's showing in the gold. It is about a 3,500 gold lead for CGA early on, despite the bot lane troubles. 40 CS down still is Milan, but that's kind of the bright spot right now for Sengoku Gaming, and everything else is looking a little bit dire, honestly.
And this is honestly just the problem, right? I mean, Sengoku picked themselves a fairy type jungler, and there's the steel type on this Rek'Sai skin, and honestly, they've just kind of picked themselves at this point. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, I know there's a Pokemon MOBA coming at some point. Didn't expect it to be right now. But CGA, they're eons ahead. They are such in the future, man. They're just too far ahead.
they had to catch them all, and they're doing pretty well right now as they've caught a lot of waves, and they've got a lot of towers while they're on it. That mid lane tier 1 still remaining, but of course, CGA with their Rift Herald push earlier got both the towers in the top lane, and all the while, Sengoku Gaming haven't even claimed that bot tier 1 they were putting so much pressure on.
Who can wave clear this? Who can wave clear that? Who's safe? I mean, as production's pointing out, just drawing my mind away from Pokemon MOBAs, which is, I don't know, it's free real estate in my head right now, rent free. Milan is going to ult the wave again, but this is a 2v2 coming out.
It is indeed, and the other thing is, once again, even if you're using these bullet times defensively, it's stopping Aphelios getting free time on the tower, is the other thing it's doing. It has meant that the towers haven't gone down as easily, even if you're not having the bullet time available for team fights, but CJ haven't been looking for them. They've been looking for 3v3s.
Yeah, what team fights? What team fights? Because you look at this Gnar on the bot side, and you see the Rek'Sai and the Camille just been like, well, shove off. We're not really, we don't care if you're under tower or not. We're taking this. And Sengoku don't have an appropriate response. They haven't managed to get this Aphelios shifted back into mid lane, wave clearing that, and then trying to go towards these side lanes when the Camille and the Rek'Sai turn up. They've gone towards the top lane, trying to get more plates, more tower pressure themselves, but they haven't even taken the bot lane out of turret, even with all the pressure they had. They have a Herald now. Maybe that's their chance to turn around the flavor of this game. But at 17 minutes, they are 5,000 gold down. And honestly, that is the biggest gold lead we have seen in the LJL so far.
Is a significant one. And you can see exactly where it is. Look at Camille. Look at Rek'Sai. Hell, look at Victor versus their opponents. Those are some significant differences in gold. Hell, it's like you've got 150% almost of your opponent's gold at this point.
This is the thing, right? So I look at I tend to look at gold leads, particularly coming into the mid game, as more because you can say a 5,000 gold lead, but if you don't have the timestamp, often that doesn't mean much. And sometimes when you tell someone that timestamp, it doesn't necessarily give that much context. But look at like the percentage gold lead, right? So there is like 30. So there's 32,000 gold in CGA, 27,000 gold. So that's a 5,000 gold lead. And you think that's almost a 15 to 20% gold lead for CGA. That's 15 to 20% more raw stats on champions which really thrive in the early game. What does that lead to? It's led to earlier item breakpoints. That's more easy to see. And Crash is going to destroy Ramune.
He definitely is. There's the Void Rush. Good lord, the damage! Chomp down, and Rek'Sai finds another. Ramune tried to play that out, tried to escape, but you don't get to escape from Rek'Sai, especially when you stopwatch before they get to throw out that ultimate.
One of the things that we noticed about Sengoku as opposed to V3 or Axes was they just didn't look as coordinated. They looked like they were more a collection of individual players. And early into the spring split, you expect that to do better than in the late split when you do have the more coordinated teams starting to come together. But then I guess now you look at CGA and they're coming together and they're saying, okay, we have a team comp, but we have these champions to really prey upon that split skirmishy kind of style. And it's not the Jinzhou like they tried out last week, but this one has much more hit the mark.
Definitely has. I have to see, of course, whether it works out. You can see that is a vast AI bot difference. 94%, ladies and gents. That is the highest I have seen in quite some time. Blitzcrank is feeling very certain. And you can see, they've stopped the dragon stacking. They've got 4 towers to none. They've got 5 kills to do. And they have now got what looks more like a 6,000 gold lead. And it's getting consistently very, very scary. And I don't even know whether Sengoku Gaming are going to be able to scale far enough. At least they've got a second Herald here. But once again, the wave is going to get culled. And Milan will do his best to clear off this Herald as well. They don't get that mid lane tier 1. And still the towers stand.
It does, and that's because they can't even walk up to get free auto attacks. There's a Camille with teleport. Of course, the Victor has flash, can go forwards, and when you have so much target accessibility, it only takes, 2 people to get on top of this Aphelios and really make them sweat. And honestly, one of them is enough maybe to force that Aphelios out of the fight, even with the gold that they do have. Milan is not really going to be the damage threat. They don't need to be. The extra tick of damage from the bullet time might actually just be enough for this game.
Yeah, that's definitely going to have to be something else to think about right now. We're going to see, of course, the likes of this Camille right now. Nap, who's supposed to be this weak side god, is actually having a very strong carry performance, a very strong side performance right now. And who deals with Camille in a side lane, right? Nanar certainly not. Ramune certainly not. Zoe, in fact, really hates dealing with Camille, who could just pin her in place with a Hextech ultimatum. So, I mean, they're just running out of options to deal with this guy.
Exactly. It's about who can even... The question for me isn't necessarily about the 1v1. It's who can even safely hold a tower. And even 3 group members of Sengoku Can't do that versus the 3 from CGA. They're brute forcing everything. They're rolling across the map, taking inner turrets, taking outer turret in the mid lane too. And this is without Baron spawned. It has now, of course. But this is before CGA have really started turning on the afterburners.
Well, of course, the afterburners not all that far away if they're not even there right now. If this is without the afterburners, like, the moon really isn't all that far away, and I'm thinking I'm spotting GameStop in the distance, and just passing us by in the window as CGA seem to have found some diamond hands in this top side.
Well, I was saying CGA found themselves some challenger hands,
True.
now...
True.
It's hoping to be a bit more high ranked than that.
Well,
it's a worrying trend. A worrying trend, I tell you.
Yeah, well,
and this
worrying
is
trends led to Darius pentakills. If you're following that meme, so I wouldn't be too upset.
Yeah. I have to say this is a really inspired draft from CJ. Looking back at it, because as soon as they locked in the Rek'Sai, I'm kind of sat there because we were looking at the last pick and going, well, you know, what can they do that can start like just kind of tiding over the early game and giving maybe something that can gank top lane. There's no AP jungler. It's like, oh, we don't need an AP jungler. We've got something that can actually gank, and that's something which a lot of teams aren't too practiced against. I wonder if we're going to go start seeing a little bit more from this, particularly from the likes of CGA and more of the early-minded aggressive junglers. I wonder if we'll see even someone like Steel pick it up. But CGA have found themselves something which works for them, and Sengoku have been found very flat-footed in this game.
I mean, obviously, even things, of course, that, like, every time Olaf is meta, Trundle soon follows. There's that kind of option to go a bit more tanky, even. And you're right, you know, if you can punish out the Lilia, who really wants 6, honestly, before she's a true gank threat, you know, with the Lilting Lullaby offering significantly more in terms of CC and the likes.
Look how little damage that does.
I know. That's Merc Treads, of course, assisting there. There's a stopwatch in infantry. There's a Sterak's in infantry. This Rek'Sai gets to go incredibly deep and feel pretty happy about it. And for all that we're saying, yeah, gonna be falling off a little bit. It's still gonna be a fairly rough engage to deal with. It's still gonna bring in a Galio. It's still gonna help set up a Camille. So how far it actually falls off in this team comp is very debatable.
So, exactly. I think if you pick yourself a Graves or an Olaf or an Udyr as well, I guess, this Rek'Sai doesn't achieve as much as it does this game. I think it works because it's a squishy AP jungle, which is also a threat for Rek'Sai to duel in the early game. Because, of course, Olaf has a much... Those other AD champions tend to have a much better matchup versus the Rek'Sai in particular. But you can see what happens when Rek'Sai does get off to a start, and at this point, Rek'Sai is a threat in themselves, but has also transferred so much of that gold over to the lanes as well. It's a 60 CS lead towards Nap in the top side, 30 in the mid lane, and even the bot lane is starting to even out from what it was in the early game, because that was a 40 to 50 CS lead. It's dropped now around about to 30, getting up towards those 2 item states for both AD carries. It's not like the Aphelios can solo carry these team fights at this point in the game either.
No, and Victor, as we said, definitely strong. Camille, kind of untenable in this side lane. Cassidy even steals away the blue buff here for as little as Rek'Sai uses it. One of the worst blue buff users in the game, in fact. No mana.
Well, that's why we used to see. That's actually why we used to see first blue buff sometimes being given over to mid laners in previous seasons when it was more of the supportive Rek'Sai and needing less of that XP. When we saw stuff like Season 5 Victor or Azir, which were about holding lane and just having infinite wave clear and not really having interactive laning phases. Yes, Rek'Sai was actually quite valuable just by saying, I don't actually need this blue buff.
Well, it's going to be somewhat of a problem, but we'll have to see how it actually plays out. Looking around here, and we can see a number of those mythics have come through, and at least, the likes of Gango now getting towards 2.5 items, which is good news for something like the Aphelios. And then there's the Leandries and the Moonstone in for both the Lilia and, of course, the Zoe. And they've got Zhonya's in, which might help buy some time. So that's something for Sengoku Gaming, of course, on top of things like the Shirelias from Thresh to maybe disengage somewhat. But you're still into this 2-item, nearly 3-item Camille. You're into a 3-item Rek'Sai, who's got a GA on top of everything else now. You've got a 2.5 item Victor. Yeah.
Exactly. This Rek'Sai is YOLO mode. You've got 2 defensive items and the Prowler's Claw, which of course gives you lethality. It's not like you're not getting extra damage from building these somewhat off-tank items in the Sterak's and the Guardian's Age themselves. This is why this item is so good for the likes of the Brawler Diver champions such as Rek'Sai. And yeah, at this point, this production is confirming this is the largest early game lead we have seen this split. It's 2 weeks in. It's only the first game of that second week. but it is still really impressive to see how much CGA have managed to snowball on Sengoku, who are not a collection of bad players. They just seem to have a much better idea of what they can achieve with this draft. The question is now is where do they end up transferring this to? Because they're kind of just shoving these waves down the throat of Sengoku. They're not really...
Fight going on, though.
That's how they force it.
Crash gets pulled in. They're going to get the force, but that's a good bullet time, honestly. And Cassin, yes, they go low, but they stay alive. GA does pop, but they have still got that defensive tool to work with. And welcome back, Cassin. You don't die, you get the kill. And that will buy them space to shove in on this tier 2. It's still not as clean as perhaps they would have liked, but they get a lot out of it too. And you see how dangerous these engages can be, even if Cassid has to throw themselves in face first.
Exactly. GA coming up pretty big. Sterix was definitely needed too. They kill the jungler, and that means Baron's on the menu, boys. Rek'Sai are going to slowly make their way back over towards that side of the map. And honestly, Sengoku, I don't think you can even contest this.
They might have to think about it, though. Here comes Paz and Gango. They want to fight. Moonlight Vigil is up. If Aphelios can find something, that's the Calibrum ult, but it doesn't manage to hit as much as they would like. Baron goes down, and now Cassid and Nap are stepping forward to see whether they can get something, but the Boomerang was decent, honestly, to slow the engages there, and they do manage to get out with losing a member, which is a paltry silver lining indeed.
Let's go check in on the gold lead. It's 10,000 after the Baron's gone. The Dragon is spawning. There's another objective to fight around. Milan has reset, had the Baron recall, but this is going to be a fight without the AD carry of CGA. Luckily, they're not really the key part of this composition. Camille teleports bot side, and Sengoku immediately bail and say, wait, hang on, what are we doing again?
I like that. Wait, what? And
it's like, hang on, there's like, yes, we're going to contest Dragon with a 10,000 gold deficit versus the Baron up team. Okay, maybe
Naps
not.
on the flank as well. Look out for the Hextech ultimatum. Crash does manage to go in and help take that one out with Aphelios, but now Gango is so low. Lilting Lullaby's coming up, but Gango needs to get out, needs to escape. Cassin gets one, Victor gets another, and the Lilia falls down to the Queen of the Xur side to make it a double for Cassin. And suddenly it's a 3 for none. Yeah, they lose Drake, but they don't care that much about it because they've got Baron, and now they have free reign to shove in and try and end this game on their terms very quickly.
Don't give a damn. If you lose a fight when you're against a Baron up team, you don't have those members to defend your base. Because the Aphelios is down, because the Lilia is down, it's going to be a straight home run for CGA off of that Baron play into the Dragon, into the base.
They're going to try and get something here at the end, perhaps, but they've got a Nexus turret that's already fallen. 5 seconds on Gango, 3 on Crash. They need to find something now. Nap goes in onto Ramune, but Galio comes in with a heroic entrance, and it is all done. CGA find the win here in this first game of our day. What a win then, Imera.
Yeah, exactly. I think particularly that last minute or two of closing play, the pick onto the Lilia, which you think, oh, that's a bit deep, but you realize the gold lead they have. You realize they got a Guardian Angel and Asterix on the Rek'Sai. It felt like it was such a high risk play, but it actually wasn't. They transfer that into a Baron, take that over to the Dragon. Sengoku finally commit to a fight. They lose wholeheartedly, and CGA close out the game.
They really do. But to deal with this, we're going to have to go to a quick break. So we'll be right back just after this.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Must one, initialize, Nightmare on the other side. Ladies and gentlemen, we're here to break down Sengoku Gaming facing off against Crest Gaming Act. And that was maybe one of the cleanest games we've seen in the LJL for a very brief moment. There was the Crest Gaming Act Burning Core game that was very quick, but it wasn't anywhere near as clean. This felt decisive, and Crest Gaming Act looked pretty strong, Nightmare.
It did. Part of that is because it feels like Hassan has shown a propensity to go towards early game junglers in a way that not many
That's
junglers
true.
across the globe have done so. No one's really playing Jin Zhao. No one's really playing Rek'Sai, but we saw what happened when you get towards that Prowler's Claw. You have the ability to not only just get that very early level 3, 4 to 6 gank mark of the Rek'Sai, which they played so well around. They also had that threat going a little bit further into that game, and Rek'Sai, much like with why Olaf is doing so well nowadays, doesn't fall off as hard as we maybe remember her used to.
No, I did get vivid imaginations of Tank Rek'Sai, and I was like,
Oh,
oh,
Sidestone
are,
Rek'Sai, not again.
Are we potentially going back to that? It was because it was brought up on the LCS broadcast last night, so I was like, ooh, I couldn't help but think of that. Initialize though, I want to ask you, sir, a bit of the question of let's talk about this like kind of early game Kassin gangs. How did it go so badly from your eyes, but instead of from CGA's point of view of it going good, Sengoku's view of how it went so bad?
So there was kind of a split map in terms of which side was going to be weak, which side was going to be strong. Bot lane was
Yeah.
left kind of to the Wolves, and Gango and NT certainly did a good job of pushing their advantage in terms of CS, even if they didn't necessarily find the kills. Problem is, on the top side of the map, we had an early tower dive from both Cassin and Victor turning up to assist Nap, who gets an early kill onto the Gnar, who teleports back in. Cassin turns up about a minute or so later and does the exact same thing again. And suddenly Gnar is down 40 CS and 2 kills, a load of tower plates. They get Herald, they shove down 2 towers, and all the while on the bot side, yeah, you got a 40 CS lead. That's genuinely fantastic, don't get me wrong. But you've only got one plate, and maybe you get to dive them once over the course of 15 minutes. While on the top side, your Gnar is never, ever going to be able to lane against this Camille ever again in the game. And Cassin has got a load of early kills, an early Prowler's Claw, and suddenly your Victor is also up to these early upgrades, and your top side of the map is literally untenable. Rek'Sai is hiding in your jungle, and no one can deal with a Camille on the side lane.
So when that happened, Sengoku kind of found themselves really far behind through CGA's what's the word? Entrepreneur wanting to win. Go the extra mile. Do what you need to do. Or did it actually start with their coach Nightmare and it was actually just a complete draft diff?
I think there is a draft diff. I think that there are some fulcrums in this game where it turned about very, very heavily. The first point is basically the Gnar was not a factor, and that suddenly means that this Camille with the Rek'Sai hovering about in the fog of war can kill anyone on the map. You don't have an Olaf or a Graves, which is slightly better at dueling out the Rek'Sai. You don't have even someone like a Malphite or an Ornn, which can just kind of sit and then just teleport to a fight more reliably, because of course you have to play around Mega Gnar, and you don't get the choice to play around that Mega Gnar bar if you are behind in that game. So you're losing all of your side lane positions. You literally only had the Aphelios to play around, but then guess who's ahead? Well, again, it's that Rek'Sai and the Camille, who get unparalleled target accessibility from those roles realistically, so the Aphelios was not safe. It never came to a 5v5 until the one point when it did at the very end of the game, and at that point they were 10,000 gold down. There's no way the Aphelios could live through that fight, and it felt like CGA just, they had the perfect game plan for their draft. Maybe if they didn't get those early advantages, the Lilia just becomes much more of a damage and utility threat, and it becomes more of a slow game. But for the way the game played out, CGA's comp was very hard to counter from the perspective of Sengoku.
If you win top side or mid, CGA win game. Okay, I like it. I mean that is a very good description. I think we've covered this topic perfectly. And gentlemen, that means Crest Gaming Act have got another one, and Sengoku Gaming are now 0-3 in the LJL. Hey guys, we've been doing a lot of these predictions, and currently we're kind of on top of it, where at least when it comes to Sengoku a bit more. But in our next match, we'll be seeing if Sengoku can rectify a bunch of these problems, or are they going to be having some issues? We're going to be seeing the Fukuoka SoftBank Hawks Gaming facing off against Sengoku Gaming. But before we go, we must say, sadly, goodbye to Nymera. He's got real
Good
world
riddance.
things to do.
Good riddance. Get out of here. Didn't
Yeah,
want you
no.
anyway.
Education.
Best of luck with the rest of the cast, guys, but it'll be great.
Thank you so much, Nymera. But with all of that, we're going to go to a quick break. And when we are back, we'll be bringing you the SoftBank Hawks facing off against Sengoku Gaming. Don't go anywhere.